Hello my guys, gals and non-binary pals, and welcome to a new video from Them Fatales. Hi, my name's Raven, my pronouns are she, her, and in this video we are going to talk about The Matrix Resurrections. Now, we already did a video on this channel many months ago, and apologies about the lack of videos that we've been making, where I did a deep dive on the trailer for Matrix Resurrections, gave my thoughts and predictions about what I thought this movie was going to be about, the themes that were going to be covered, and a bit more of a transgender contextualization on the previous three films. So, without further ado, let's get into it. So this video is going to be completely unscripted, which is unusual for this channel. Normally we put quite a lot of work into research, making sure we get all the points done properly. There's a very good reason why I wanted to make this video kind of off the cuff and just give my feelings about it, and that's because of the difference in how Lana approached this movie and the previous trilogy. She's admitted in the past that the first three films she tried to have as much control over it as possible, so she storyboarded, her and Lily storyboarded every single scene, all the fight scenes meticulously, and recreated them perfectly, and did hundreds of takes of each shot, kind of as a very Stanley Kubrick style. And she's admitted that the reason for doing so is because she didn't feel very much in control of her life at that time, and so this was a way for her to exert some control, not necessarily, I guess, over herself, but over the things that she was creating, of which she put quite a lot of herself into. And yeah, I can definitely relate to that. You know, one part of the reasons why videos have been a bit lax on this channel is that both me and Ginger kind of have been having a difficult time with our self-image and feeling like we don't necessarily have control over that. But you know what, it's a new year, it's new us, so let's see how we get on. Now, my first thoughts after watching this movie, I'd seen some of the reviews, so I hadn't read any reviews. I wanted to go in as blind as possible, but I kind of knew going from how people reacted to the sequels, I kind of looking at what these movies were going to be, I knew there were going to be people who had issues with it. And I know the day before we watched it, Google sent a notification to my phone. There was a review from The Guardian that gave it 2 stars and said, The Matrix Resurrections and why it's been eaten up by the Hollywood machine. So it's like, okay, here we go, like it's gonna start coming in. And yeah, I watched it, and my first thought coming out of it was, I don't care what anyone thinks about this movie. Because it was the exact movie that I wanted. Some of the scenes that were in there, some of the editing style, the shooting style, it was all very evocative of feelings that I've had myself, and being able to see those experiences replicated so perfectly and so beautifully as well really meant a lot to me. And while since then I have looked at some of the other reviews and I agree with a lot of the criticism, I just don't care. You know, whereas with the previous trilogy, I used to spend quite a lot of time arguing with people online about what it meant and why they were good. You know, I even did it in the previous video. I covered a lot of points, a lot of issues that I think people have with the trilogy and why I think they're wrong with it. This, it doesn't really matter. You know, it meant a lot to me. I very much enjoyed watching it. I've watched it several times now, and yeah, no, everyone else can just think what they want. Part of that was that I wasn't going to make a review video. I wasn't going to do a follow-up because I didn't really feel like I needed to. But, you know, then we received a fair few requests asking for what my thoughts were, so I thought it might be worthwhile doing so. So having read through a few reviews and watched a couple video essays, oh, by the way, The Guardian put out like another review about 5 days later where they upped it from 2 stars out of 5 to 4 stars, so who knows what people actually think about it. But one of the things I realized was that people, yeah, essentially people are missing a lot of cues, and I think if you don't have that life experience and that context, or that framework within which to see the movie, then a lot of the ideas, they just don't even register. You just don't notice them, so it doesn't add anything to the story for you. And, you know, that's one of the... I mean, that could almost be a criticism of the first trilogy. I mean, at that time, Lana and Lily struggled to really put in the ideas and the themes that they wanted to. Like, Warner Brothers wouldn't let them. You know, they had to cut out the trans character from the original script. And so what you end up with then is a movie that is almost too subjective. It's too universal. Like, everyone really can just kind of take what they want from that movie, and they can apply it to their own lives. And, you know, we've seen this, as discussed before. Like, there's the alt-right, there's the men's rights movement who've appropriated the red pill. And there's even a scene in this movie where the executives of, I mean, spoilers obviously at this point, but the executives of the game development company that Neo works for, you know, they're arguing about what the movie actually means just as much as we were beforehand. In this movie, however, things get a bit more objective. I mean, yeah, let's go into a few of those things. So something that crops up a lot more in this movie, and I mentioned it in the trailers, this is the theme of reflection, of seeing your own image. One of the core aspects of this movie is that the machines had actually altered Neo's image to everyone else. It's never made quite clear whether or not he can see himself properly, but at the very least, like, no, there's someone else that everyone else sees and no one treats him kind of as he is supposed to be. And yeah, you get lots of scenes of him sort of staring in the mirror, poking at his face. And yeah, that's something that I've definitely done. One of the issues with having dysphoria is that it's so easy to cross that line into dysmorphia, where if there's something that you know you don't like about yourself, when you look in the mirror, you can end up honing in on it and staring at it and spending so long looking at it that it becomes this huge thing. And so your sense of your own image gets altered by essentially the amount of attention that you pay to it. And it's only really by sort of stepping back and taking a picture of the whole that you can get a good sense of it. But I think something that's really interesting about this is, I mean, kind of the idea of self-image itself. You know, everyone can kind of share in this experience, which is that we don't ever get to look at ourselves, you know, to see the whole image. I mean, when we look in the mirror, we get a very fixed perspective of ourselves. And not only that, but it's reversed. That's why every time you take a selfie, and you know, the camera will show you that reversed image, but then it flips back around and suddenly you're shocked. But even with photographs, I mean, as a photographer, it's something I got to keep in mind all the time. Like, photographs are not an accurate representation of what we look like. They're static. They're a sliver of a slice of reality at a particular time. You can't go and walk around a photograph. You can't see it from every angle. You can't see it in motion. Even now, you're not seeing what I really look like because this image is compressed. Your perspective is fixed. I can spin around on this chair all I like, but you're never going to get a full sense of who I am, and neither will I when I get to stare at myself editing this video later. And so the only true image we can really have of ourselves is our sense of self. You know, that can be built up with slivers and fractions and images and photographs and videos and the reflection, but you never know how anyone else is seeing you. So one of the scenes you get while they're sort of exploring these themes as well is almost like a music video. They just threw a music video into the middle of this movie, which I really appreciated. It's almost, you know, it's a lot of scenes from the trailer. It's all cut together quite interestingly. Where, you know, they play the song White Rabbit by Jefferson Airplane from the trailer. And essentially I've never really seen dissociation and depersonalization and derealization get depicted in such a pure way that, like, I really felt for Neo. You know, one of the things I discussed in the predictions video was that, you know, this movie is a lot about transitioning later in life. And something that's very kind of particular and familiar to me is the idea of almost coming to realize, almost coming to know yourself. And then going back into the closet and pushing all those feelings away and trying to live life as if it isn't real. When I was in my early 20s, probably, one of the hardest periods of my life where my mental health was absolutely atrocious. I had issues with alcohol and drugs at the time. I was really starting to come to terms with the idea that I was trans. I'd had these thoughts for so long about what I wanted to be and what I felt like I should be, but because of the lack of representation on trans ideas, namely being every trans woman I'd ever seen on television had known since she was a child, and I hadn't known, I just knew that something was wrong. It didn't work. I got really close, but I don't know. I know I was chatting to a lot of people online about things, and they were telling me that my experiences, weren't trans enough, essentially, to be able to do it. I was essentially told to stop appropriating trans ideas, and that, the things that I wanted, the changes that I wanted to make myself, that they weren't for me. And I pushed that all down. So, I started to take the blue pill, the Matrix blue pill. I woke up in my bed the next day and I forgot that any of it had happened. That doesn't make the feeling of wrongness go away. It's it's the greatest flaw of Cypher's idea in the first Matrix, where he wants to get plugged back in. He's always going to know that the Matrix is real. Once you pick up on it, it doesn't go away. And that's what we see in this film, where, in order to keep Neo in place where they want him to be, they have to keep giving him blue pills every single day. That's something that I did. Like, I took antidepressants to try and fix how I was feeling, and they made no difference. One of the things I really liked in this movie is the scene where Bugs was trying to wake up Morpheus, fake Morpheus, program Morpheus, and she shows him the red pill, and she talks about how she'd missed the point of the choice, that there is no choice, you already know what you have to do. And essentially that's one of the things we do in the trans community to try and wake people up, is ask the question, if you could push a magic button, you could wake up in a different gender and everything would already be done, you'd be cisgender of the desired one that you want, would you press it? And basically every trans person would say yes to that question. So if your answer is yes, you probably have some things you want to explore. And that's what's happened to me. Like, it doesn't matter how many times I chose not to take the red pill, I had to take it in the end. Now, one of the other aspects of transgender life that I think was captured really well, that might have flown over a few people's heads if you kind of don't experience it. Instead of agents now, we have these things called bots, which they're just ordinary people. They look like normal people. You never know who's a blue pill and who's a bot, and at any moment they can be activated and the swarm will attack you. I found this really funny because I don't use Twitter because it's a cesspit of a social media platform. It's literally designed just to piss you off and cause arguments. I know people who say I only use Twitter because I follow artists or people that I like, but that trending square is always there. And so every time a trans person in the UK especially sees gender trending in that, like, we know that shit's gone down. Or if JK's trending. But one funny thing is that someone did a deep dive on, I'll have to look it up, but someone did a deep dive and something like a ridiculous number of the transphobic Twitter accounts are actually just bots. They're sock puppet accounts of like 100 people. And they all just control them. They make it look like their movement is much bigger than it actually is. Like, there's so many more of them. But every time they do a survey in the UK on how the general public feel about trans issues, it always comes out that everyone's very much for it. Like, always the majority are supportive of trans rights. They think that misgendering someone is unacceptable. They would be upset by transphobic content on the TV or on the BBC. There's always this inflated sense of transphobia that's about. I mean, there's always going to be some asshole on the streets who, if they see me looking a bit too femme, they're going to say something, especially if they're drunk. Thankfully, I haven't had to deal with that too much because of COVID, because there's not that many people out, or at least I don't go out when there's lots of people out. One of the issues that I had before I actually started to take hormone replacement therapy was I was terrified of dressing femininely in public. And the weird thing is, years ago, I had no issue with it. I used to go out to nightclubs in dresses and full makeup and fishnet tights. There's one time where it was like 6 a.m. on a Monday morning. I stood in Tottenham Court Road tube station in like a schoolgirl outfit with like everyone just commuting to work. And it was completely fine for me at the time because in my head I was like, well, I'm just a guy, so no one cares what guys do. I just had this weird sense of male privilege that allowed me to dress femininely. And then once I realized that I'm trans, suddenly it becomes frightening. And there's kind of two sides to that. One is being scared of being perceived as trans, because say if I'm on a bus, I don't know who on the bus has a problem with me. It could be any one of them. Any one of them could be a bot. It could be all of them. And at any moment they might get activated and swarm and attack me. But there's also another sense of that, which is I'm a bit scared of being perceived as a woman by people. It's dangerous being a woman. Like, we've had so many stories in the UK over the last few years of, women being attacked and even murdered by the police, of all people. And that sums it up. You just can't know who is going to decide that day that they want to ruin your life. But thankfully, HRT has been one of those things that has certainly helped with that. It's helped my mood so much, and it's helped my anxiety so much that a lot of those fears have kind of gone away. And I have to remember, I'm over 6 feet tall. It's one of the things that's kind of protected me from being attacked, even just being kind of gothic or a little bit feminine looking, is that people tend not to want to mess with me. Maybe that's changed, I don't know, maybe we'll find out. So, another thing I really liked about this, not a huge fan of Neil Patrick Harris personally, but he blew it out the park for The Analyst. A really sinister performance, really evocative of... Okay, so one of the things that I have a massive issue with how transgender diagnosis and transgender healthcare has been treated for the last 50 years is it being treated as a mental health issue that requires psychiatric help. In America, this isn't so much of an issue because they have something called an informed consent model, where you can go to Planned Parenthood and you can say that I know what all the risks are, I know where all the side effects are, this is something that I want, and you sign your life away and they'll give you the hormones. In the UK, that's a very different situation. Not so much in Wales. We've changed things up in Wales, but in England especially, to get access to transgender healthcare, you have to be seen by a psychiatrist who will ask you lots of invasive questions. And based off your answers to those questions, which are entirely self-reported, so you can really just say anything if you want to, then they'll decide whether or not you have enough gender to transition. And I've seen some absurd reports of how this works. One of the doctors asks this question. He even prefaces it by saying, I'm sorry, but I have to ask this because of the journalists. But it's, have you tried just dressing up as a woman and living your life that way? And it's like, yes, that's how we got here. That's why we're having this conversation. Of course. But anyway, a lot of the things I hear about that do happen in America are people who will see therapists or gender therapists, or their parents will send them to therapy. And so if this therapist is transphobic, they're going to do everything that they can to convince you that the feelings that you have aren't the feelings that you're having, or that they don't mean what you think they mean, and try and drag you down to this, to their version of reality and who you are. And there's a lot of people who haven't transitioned because of this, because we have this sense of authority that we put into professionals. We do it with the police, we do it with our doctors, and we do it with therapists. You know, we think that they know better. I mean, why else would we go to them? And so we take what they say on board, and that can be damaging. And it's why it doesn't make any sense for this to be treated by psychiatrists. Psychiatrists have no place in this because, again, like the whole theme of the first movie is about knowing yourself. It's about self-actualization and the power that you have and the things that you can do and the way that you can remold yourself and reality once you get that power. And it is, you know, in a sense, if you were going to a therapist to find out whether or not you're trans and you should transition, you can self-select. If you pick a trans-positive one, they're going to help you get to that point. If you pick a transphobic one, they're going to drag you away from it. And the only thing that matters is whether or not you believe that you are. And so the analyst in this movie does an absolutely fantastic job at gaslighting Neo into thinking that the things that he feels and the things that he sees and what he's experiencing aren't real. And I think I mentioned this in the last video, I'm not sure. Maybe I didn't. One of the realizations I've kind of come to realize about gender is just how much we're gaslit about our own genders, especially if you're trans. You know, when I was born, the doctor saw that I had a penis and decided that therefore I was a boy. And so every single day from that point, I have been told by my family, by society, by school teachers, by doctors, that that's what I was. So how was I supposed to feel like a woman? If everyone is telling me that how I feel and what my experiences are, those are the feelings and experiences of a boy. Like, fair enough, I never really connected with other men. I never really understood how they worked. You know, it's a bit like if when you were a child, someone told you that the color of the sky was green. I mean, kind of appropriate in The Matrix. The sky is very green in The Matrix. And so you've been going your entire life thinking, okay, well that color's green, so that means that the sea is green, and the grass is blue. And then suddenly, like 20 years later, say, someone, you know, you're wearing a green t-shirt and someone tells you, oh, nice blue t-shirt. Then you're going to start to twig that something's not right. And when you realize that everyone else is talking about this color as being this thing called blue. And when you explore it, you know, it's been 20 years. It's going to take a long time to unlearn what those feelings are. And yeah, that's essentially what's happening to Neo in this movie. Like, everyone around him isn't real. Everyone around him is there designed to keep him stuck in this time loop, essentially, where every day is exactly the same. So then, as the movie moves on, Neo finally wakes up again. And then we learn some interesting things that have happened since the end of the original trilogy. So the war has stopped, but there's been some issue with the Matrix. The power stations, the fields of people have started to fail. There isn't enough energy. So there's been kind of a civil war with the machines. We learn that this is in fact a new version of the Matrix, which is very interesting, and we'll get into that. And we learn that, I don't know, we don't find out really about Zion. Maybe Zion fell, maybe Zion is somewhere else. But we have this new wonderful place where the humans are living called Io. What I really love about Io is it's essentially this shared thing that every queer person has, which is that one day I'm going to buy a plot of land and I'm going to build a house and I'm going to make a queer commune, and all my queer friends from all around the world can come live there. We're going to grow our own food and we're just going to have a gay old time. Yeah, it's really sweet to see kind of like, and I don't know, even an idealized dystopian version of this was very cool. It even kind of answers a few questions. So, you know, one of the issues that I had with the original trilogy was about how transness works in the Matrix. So if you wake up in the real world and you are trans, where are you going to get your estrogen from? Like, being able to transition in the real world is going to be difficult. And then we get this interesting idea of the the machines helping them kind of extract DNA and like other compounds from matrix code, from how the matrix originally cataloged what things were made of. So, you know, they're able to build strawberries. So I like the idea that now we can kind of be able to synthesize estrogen maybe in a little bit better way. One of the main points is that this nice queer little commune is very separated from everything else that's going on. They don't really engage in the war. They apparently they haven't woken anyone up in a really long time. And yeah, there's a good point about knowing when to disengage from the fights. You know, being a marginalized identity, it can get exhausting every day trying to fight the system, trying to fight the machines. And so I don't begrudge Niobe or anyone living in there for wanting to stay out of it and, you know, just live their life separate from society. But there's still the issue of the Matrix. The Matrix is still real. And, you know, then we come to how this new Matrix works. There's some fantastic references where Lana is like absolutely making it cut and dry that the alt-right are wrong to take what they've taken from the original trilogy. Dennis talks about how like this Matrix is built on feelings, not facts. It's all about making everyone just a little bit uncomfortable and feeling on edge. One of the things Niobe says is that she forgets how much noise that the Matrix pumps into your head. And again, I mean, it's a perfect reflection of modern life. Now this is very different from 1999 where you had to log onto a computer. Now we have smartphones. Information is just being pumped at us constantly. And whoever's in control of that information is in control about how we feel. So in that sense, by making everyone constantly uncomfortable and at odds with each other, nobody's paying any attention to who the real people in control are. And this is what we learn about the relationship that Neo and Trinity have in this new version of the Matrix. You know, the analyst talks about how he can draw more power from those two alone than the entirety of everyone else, it seems, in order to keep the Matrix running. And there's this point about always having them close together but never quite being able to reach each other. There's a great scene where the analyst does like his new version of bullet time, where he slows everything else down except for him. Neo's like running as fast as he can to try and stop a bullet that's going for Trinity. And it's very repetitive of the scene in Matrix Reloaded, where Trinity's falling out of the building and the bullets are flying at her, and Neo's flying faster than he's ever done before. And, you know, he's pushing himself, and the more he pushes himself, the more power he gets. It's very Dragon Ball in that sense. You know, it's all about breaking your limits. And so by keeping those two at odds, never together, but always close, yeah, that's how the system's able to be held in control. And it made me think a lot about, like, yeah, the battle that there is between the left and the right. I mean, we're all facing the same issues. We're all facing the issues of capitalism, you know, rural areas having all the money taken away and pushed into the cities. All of the wealth is being generated by just a few mega corporations. So everyone working at the bottom is getting kind of nothing from it. So even though, like, you know, since the 80s, things like GDP of every country have gone way up, the sort of quality of life for people, the amount of hours that they have to work in order just to make a living, like all of that is getting harder. And what do the people who are in control of the information do? They pit everyone against each other. You know, at the moment, the Conservative Party in the UK are pushing very hard on this idea of a culture war, which is kind of a fight between traditional British values and progression, essentially. So things like transgender rights, gay rights, Black Lives Matter, you know, all the information around these ideas is so conflictual and so manipulative and so based on feelings. I mean, this idea of classic British values, it comes from a fantasy reality. It comes from a fake reality. And I've kind of nailed it down to empire. They yearn for the olden times, like even as far back as Victoria and through to like the 40s and the 50s when Britain was this huge power. We had an empire. And what Britain did during that time was project an image of itself out to the world. Every country that it ruled, places like Jamaica or India, it sold this idea of, you're British now, and that's a good thing. Because this land is as British as the British soil back home. Britain is a wonderful place. People wonder why so many refugees want to come here. They don't. But when people ask refugees, why did you come here? It's because there's this perception of Britain around the world that it is a free place. That, you can come and you can live and you can work, and there is no racism and there is no sexism, and if you are a gay person living in the Middle East, you can come and work and be safe. And to an extent that is true, but it's still a bit of a shock. And we do this a lot in the movies that we export, things like Downton Abbey. What all these things fail to do is they fail to acknowledge what life is like for an average British person during these times. And it's always been a struggle. I mean, during the 60s and 70s, we were known as the sick man of Europe. Now probably the next sick man of Europe is going to be a country like Italy. And so what's my point? I mean, my point is that a lot of people are fighting over ideology when systemic issues are so easy to see and to fix. But there's almost a sense of, as long as they can keep us fighting each other, we'll never look at what they're doing. And honestly, it's so clear how much it's working. The amount of public money that has gone into private hands over COVID, with contracts being sent to owners of companies who just happen to be friends of ministers. Billions and billions and billions of pounds wasted. And the polls for the Tories has never changed because, at least Priti Patel is fighting migrants, and at least Liz Truss is fighting trans people, and at least Stephen Barclay is fighting the EU. As long as all these issues are being covered, I don't care if my life's shit. I don't care if my cost of living is going up. It doesn't matter so long as those people are kept down, because they're what's dangerous. People call Black Lives Matter a terrorist organization. If you look at what Black Lives Matter, if you look at even what the reporting of Black Lives Matter is in this country, all they did was tear down a statue. And yet that's a threat to the British way of life. What is the British way of life at this point? And so, you kind of get this this sense in the movie that, this version of the Matrix is very much in, trying to keep control of people's feelings, that it's powered by, it's upheld by, it's reinforced by these conflicts. I think everyone can agree that there's been a shift in politics, especially sociopolitics, since around 2015. Around 2015, that's when I'm starting to learn so much about transgender experiences that, it's filtering through, it's getting to me, I'm starting to learn about myself. And suddenly there's a snap. And transphobic articles start to skyrocket, especially through 2016, especially through 2017. As stories of Caitlyn Jenner then come out, and everyone starts to think about trans people, and they start to realize, oh no, this is getting too much. This is something that needs to be dealt with. It was kind of a tough time to learn about myself that way. Just when everything is things are about to get okay, and then, really fell off a cliff there. And so we get to the climax of the movie. I mean, this is where I'll agree, it starts to fall apart. The whole action scenes running through the streets with the bots coming down. Not really for that. The action was definitely lacking in this movie. In a sense, that's a good thing because, I don't know, I'm kind of torn on this aspect because, they're trying to make it much more about these other issues than it just being an action movie. If all you care about in the original trilogy was the action scenes, then this definitely isn't a movie for you. But if you care about all the philosophy and all the other ideas and the systems of control and how society works, then I think it does a much better job of that. And so it's a shame that it kind of devolves into this, I don't know, what is it, 20 minutes, 30 minutes action scene. that's not visually that interesting. But you know, it comes to the climax. We're back on top of a building, very similar to the first movie. You know, we're being attacked by attack helicopters. Good reference. You know, Neo has that wonderful deflect into that. And then one of the moments that made me cry the most in this movie, we have it where Neo and Trinity jump off the building. I've seen some misunderstandings about this scene, like as if, you know, that this was a leap of faith, and you know, this was Neo freeing his mind, and you know, that he thought that he was going to fly if he jumped and really pushed himself for it. That's definitely not what it was. Like, no, they were backed into a corner. They didn't know where else they could do. They know that either they're getting out of the Matrix or they're dying, but they can't let themselves get plugged back in the way that they were. And so essentially, yeah, they both jump off to kill themselves. And then something that I have been saying all along, and I'm so glad to be right, Trinity starts to fly, because Trinity is also the one. Because as I said in the previous movie, Neo's the one, but he's not the only one. This really reinforced a lot of the things that I brought up in the previous video about why Neo was chosen to be the one. And that relationship that he has with Trinity being so pinnacle. I think one thing that I maybe missed, I really thought that the first movies were about believing in yourself. But something that's obvious now, if you look at it retrospectively, it's about their belief in each other. You know, Neo becomes the one because Trinity believes in him. And because Trinity believes in him, then he can believe in himself. And the same thing in this movie, like the whole deal that Neo makes with the analyst about being able to extract Trinity, it's because he believes in her to be able to break free. And it's an interesting, yeah, so now we're going backtrack. Like I said, this isn't scripted. There's an interesting scene when Neo and Trinity sit down together and they discuss things, and he reveals how this works. You know, she almost goes back into the closet herself. She thinks it's too late for her. You know, she's a middle-aged woman, she's got a family now. And I thought it was actually a really good thing to, you know, have these themes of heteronormativity. You know, the idea of the nuclear family, something that's so ingrained into us, it's in all of our media. To have that being the thing that was keeping Trinity back. I mean, that heartbreaking scene when Trinity talks about, you know, playing the game The Matrix, and she turns to her husband and says, "Oh, don't you think that she looks like me?" And he laughs and she laughs and she hates it. Like, yeah, no, that's absolutely beautiful scene. But yeah, because Neo believes in her, Trinity's able to wake up, and she's able to do what Neo can now. And yeah, going back to the old movies, it's the kind of, yeah, like I said in the last video, it's a point about how Neo was chosen. So part of those systems about how the one works, about who gets to be the one. You know, the Oracle, who's a program that reads people. She understands people, she understands personality, she can predict people. She identifies Trinity as someone who, with the right person, could ascend to great things. So Trinity is told that she will fall in love with the one, so that when she falls in love with someone, that person would then believe that they're the one. And Neo is chosen to be the one because the Oracle can predict that he would love Trinity so much that he would do anything to save her. You know, he'll sacrifice everything. He'll sacrifice humanity. He's done it twice. He did it in Matrix Reloaded, and he's done it again in this movie. He's put everything at risk to be able to save her, but it's only that love which gives him the power to be able to do so. And so, yeah, they jump off the building, and Trinity is also the one. Obviously, fantastic that we've gone from a male one, so now we have a female one. That's always nice. And so then you end up with this fantastic final scene where they finally get to confront the analyst, the one who's been doing this to them for so long. Just so satisfying to watch, especially for the analyst to use such fucked up words. You know, like, yeah, the analyst getting his jaw kicked off. Can you put a leash on your bitch, please? Like, absolutely beautiful. Yeah, it was nice to get a bit more of the dead naming thing. So, like, yeah, she's really pissed off that they call her Tiffany when she hates the name Tiffany. Unsurprising. Yeah, she resents using children against her, which again is that criticism of family life being the peak of morality and the only way to build a better society and keep society running. Oh, and somebody, please think of the children. Kind of going through some of the comments that have been left off the previous video as well. Someone actually did make a really good point that they were neurodivergent, and so a lot of those themes that kind of apply to transness in the first trilogy really resonated with them as well. They see a sense of like the structures of society don't really make any sense. That's essentially what neurodivergence is. It's not quite getting why everyone else does the things that they do. And yeah, there's a lot of crossover there because there's a huge crossover between the neurodivergent community and the trans community. I don't know what I have, but yeah, I definitely am not neurotypical. Certainly traits of ADHD, traits of autism as well. Yeah, a lot of masking, a lot of pretending to be someone who I'm not in my life. It's a good point, well made. And we've received lots of comments from people on Reddit as well. Whoever shared my essay on the Matrix subreddit, thank you very much. That's very kind of you. I learned a lot about what people on that subreddit think. I really hope that the riots and the men's rights movements can't identify with this movie, because then they don't have any right to say, well, I identify with it and I'm not trans, so it can't be trans. It just, at this point, you can't say it's not. Right, thank you so very much for watching. Of course, I would love to hear your thoughts on it. If you have any experiences that you felt really aligned with what was shown in this movie, the things that you really identified with, if there's anything that I missed. Like I said, this was unscripted. Probably if I'd done a rewatch right before doing this, then I could have covered like lots of the phrases and the key points in there. But yeah, if I'd done that, I never would have made it. So no, it's good to just chat, free-formed. I don't know. Do you like this a bit more? Is this a better way of doing things? If so, let me know. I'll keep it in mind. Thank you so very much for watching, and yeah, don't forget to do all the subscribey things and the likey things. You can check out our Patreon as well, which will actually be active and have things on it now that it's a new year, it's a new January, it's a new us, and we'll see you in the next one.